What is going on, true crime fans? I'm your host, Heath.
And I'm your host, Daphne.
And you're listening to a very special edition of Going West.
Very special, because this is a Camp Tales episode all for our Heath's 38th birthday. So happy birthday, Heath. We're going camping for his birthday. This episode drops on his birthday. So we thought it would be fun if we did a little something different and tell true crime stories where nobody has to die. These stories actually came straight from you guys from Instagram. We posted, you guys submitted, and they're all like kind of camp adjacent. So it works for the theme.
Yeah, and I don't think, I don't think anybody loses their life. Maybe one person.
Or, well, there is one story.
There is one story.
Questionable situation.
Questionable, very questionable. All right, guys, without further ado, this is episode 621 of Going West. So let's get into it.
If you guys are watching over on YouTube, you can see that we're at a very fun set today over at Unwell.
Yes, the Unwell campground.
We have our Uncrustables, we have our lanterns, we have our tree.
We brought a tree in.
Heath brought a Christmas tree in, so go watch on YouTube if you guys can. Okay, I'm going to tell the first story. This one is from Ashley, and I'm calling it The Neighbor at the Campground. Ashley says, I'm 35 now, married with 2 kids, and have gone camping plenty of times since this strange-ass story occurred. But my husband jokes that I have about 50 safety rules whenever we travel, and this is probably where most of them come from. I was 19 in 2010, and it was the first time I had ever gone camping with a boyfriend's family. I didn't grow up much of a camper in Philly, so there's that. My boyfriend at the time, Chris, and I had been together for about a year, and his parents invited me on their annual summer camping trip. They had been going to the same campground for years and loved it. I was a little nervous because I really liked his parents and I wanted them to like me, and they did. Started out really fun. We were getting to know each other. They were really chill, and I knew the trip would go just as swimmingly. The campground itself was beautiful. I remember there was like a little pond and a camp store that sold ice cream and bait and stuff like that. It wasn't deep wilderness or anything like that. There were kids riding bikes and families grilling burgers everywhere you looked. You can picture it. It was like many other campgrounds.
Yeah, that's pretty reminiscent of basically every campground.
I know, I'm already so ready to camp. We were in Lancaster County, surrounded by farmland, and there were Amish properties scattered all over the area. You'd see horse and buggies on the roads and roadside stands selling produce and pies. It was honestly super peaceful. And I remember thinking it felt completely different from where I grew up. And I had wondered why my parents didn't take my siblings and I on trips like this, but it just wasn't really their style. We had barely finished setting up camp when the first strange thing happened. My then boyfriend Chris had walked over to the camp store to grab ice cream, and his parents were busy setting up the camper. I was unpacking camp chairs from the truck by myself when an older pickup slowed down in front of our site.
It's always the older pickup. For some reason, all these stories have an older...
So true. That's the
like
countryman.
Yeah, the countryman. Shitty, beat-up pickup truck. You know.
Absolutely. The driver rolled down his window and sort of just smiled at me. He looked to be maybe in his late 30s or so, older than me, but I didn't think he felt old. I remember thinking he was sort of cute, which I hate admitting now, and I wasn't interested in him, but he seemed normal. He asked if I had just arrived, and I said yes. And then he asked if I was camping alone. I think I laughed awkwardly because I thought maybe he hadn't seen everybody else or he was joking or something. Before I could answer, Chris came walking back carrying 2 bags of ice, and the man watched him approach the site. His whole expression changed when Chris came up and kissed me on the cheek. I think Chris did it for show. I don't know, maybe an insecure late teenage thing, but the guy in the truck didn't seem to like it.
Yeah. Because he had other intentions.
Yeah, because he's a creep. So he sort of just waved, drove off, and that was the end of that. Well, I thought it was. Later that evening, Chris's dad actually made a joke about somebody driving awfully slowly around the campground. I looked up, realized it was the same pickup truck from earlier. But I was weirdly embarrassed to bring it up, as though they would think I was into this guy or that I remembered him. I can't be sure why I didn't, but I didn't want to associate. I just wanted him to go away. And he eventually did, as we ate some hot dogs and went out about our night, playing a card game and making s'mores. Love a card game and s'mores around the
Yeah,
fire.
that sounds amazing.
I know, this is like otherwise really good trip. The next morning, I woke up before everybody else and decided to go for a walk. I love walking by myself around the campground and smelling the morning firewood and seeing people starting their days. There's something peaceful and authentic about it. The guy from the night before was 100% out of my mind, and I was enjoying the nature around me. But I had only been walking for maybe 10 minutes when I heard a truck slow down beside me.
It's the campsite creeper.
It was him again. He smiled and said good morning like we were old friends and not total strangers, but instead that him running into me was a daily occurrence, I guess. I remember immediately feeling uncomfortable, but I also didn't want to be rude. But then he parked and got out and started walking beside me as I walked. He had done this kind of jog up to catch up to me.
No, you should definitely at that point be rude.
I know, literally punch this man.
Yeah.
He asked where I was from and how long I'd be staying. I just told him I was camping with my boyfriend and had to get back. And then he spewed some weird line about younger guys never appreciating girls like me, even though I was only 19. I just got this really gross feeling. But then he put his hand around my waist to pull me in closer, and I jumped away from him and told him I had to go. I was so creeped out, and I turned around and jogged back, which made me even more scared because I thought he was going to chase me. But when I turned around, he was walking back to his truck. All I wanted to do was go to my boyfriend Chris, tell him I wanted to leave and go home. But I didn't want his parents to think I was dramatic, and I didn't want to ruin their annual camping trip, so I stayed quiet. Poor girl. Poor Ashley.
Yeah, seriously.
For some reason, I feel like I didn't have any fuel behind my fear. A few hours later, I came back from the camp bathroom after taking a shower and completely stopped dead in my tracks. Because the man was sitting in a folding chair at our campsite, casually talking to Chris's parents. He had brought over some vegetables from his garden because apparently he lived nearby and knew the campground owners. When I approached, he said, "Hey, Ashley," which freaked me out because I never told him my name. I wondered if Chris's parents said something, but I still don't know to this day. At that point, I was scared because I knew something was wrong with this guy who wasn't taking no for an answer and was talking to my boyfriend's parents trying to get close to me. So I sat there as Chris and his parents talked to him about the area, and they told him all of our camping plans. When we were staying until, where we lived, everything.
No.
Thinking this guy was a nice, normal local. And I'm sure they did. I'm sure he really chatted him up.
Of course, yeah. This dude is like doing his very best to get as close to Ashley and, Chris and his family, I guess.
He's trying to like insert himself in the situation.
He's trying to insert himself in the situation so he can get a little bit closer to Ashley.
Well, I told Chris that this nice guy really creeped me out and that I kept seeing him around. But he had the gall to tell me that I was being dramatic and that he seemed fine. Wonder why we're not together anymore? And then we went to sleep. So he really Chris really dismissed Ashley's situation.
Not good, Chris. Not good.
I can't remember what we did the rest of the night, but the actual night itself was very memorable. Because at some point, I finally drifted off, but woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of footsteps outside our tent.
Oh.
Chris and I were in a tent together while his parents were in the trailer across the site, so it was just us outside. I know there were other campsites around us, but the footsteps were so close that I knew they had to be on our site, which no one would have reason to be on. Which is true. We know. We've camped around a lot of people before, and you don't walk onto somebody else's site.
No, you don't.
Through the rain fly, I could see clearly that someone was right outside our tent. I reached over and shook Chris awake and whispered as quietly as I could, "Somebody's outside." He sat up and looked toward the side of the tent and actually very quickly unzipped the tent and yelled at this guy. I didn't see what happened, just saw that he was cursing at this guy, telling him to F off and get away from our site. And he was yelling so loud that not only did Chris's parents come out, but other campers did too. I looked outside and could just barely see that same man jumping into his truck and driving off. It was such a big, chaotic deal, and I weirdly felt so embarrassed by it all, just feeling like it was my fault and we had disrupted the whole campground. But I was happy that other people saw how odd this guy was. Chris and I actually slept on the spare bed in his parents' camper the rest of the night, though I don't remember sleeping. And we left first thing in the morning and never saw that guy again. I still think about it from time to time, and it almost feels like it never happened, but I know it did. And I'm just glad it wasn't something worse. But I do wonder where he is now.
That's very, very creepy. Hold on, let's get the super creepy.
He has his flashlight out. I have my blanket on. You gotta cozy up with me.
You know what? I like that you're cozy. One thing I would say is that hopefully, Chris, you learn the error of your ways. Don't let creepy people into your campsite. And also,
don't let creepy people get to your woman.
Yeah, and also, believe her. It's like she's telling you, and I wonder if that like hand around the waist was like an attempt at like abduction. You know what I'm
that's
saying?
a good point. Yeah, because she was only 19, and I'm sure she looked somewhat young. He's in his late 30s. Like, that was not the thing to do no matter what. But finally he has her alone, and he's kind of, seems like he's taking that opportunity to see what he can do. I mean, his truck was right there. He might have been trying to take her.
Yeah.
And then didn't want to chase her.
This is very reminiscent of our camping trips, too. Not that we get
not that part
preyed upon by creepers. No, but like, just being in a tent, like you'll hear the slightest sound outside, and it's always like at like 3 a.m.
Yeah.
When the camp is just dead silent, you'll hear like little footsteps. Usually it's like a deer or an animal or something.
Or somebody going to pee.
Somebody going to the bathroom.
Going to the camp bathrooms or something.
But it's like you and I have been through that scenario where we wake up and we're like, what was that?
I hate when we're camping and you hear like a truck driving by or a car driving by. I'm like, what are you doing in the middle of the night? Why are you here?
Yeah, why are you just like you're just showing up to your campsite at 3 a.m.? What are you doing, weirdo?
So weird.
It's freaky.
Well, I'm glad that nothing happened to Ashley, but creepy story, really bad first camping story.
Yeah, I wonder if Ashley continued to go camping after that.
She did. Yeah.
She did.
She did.
Okay, well.
Yeah, she says that she still loves camping. But
brought along some mace.
It seems like it got her into camping, maybe.
Yeah.
Like she appreciated.
That's the story that got her into camping, yes.
But nothing has happened since, it appears. So thank you, Ashley.
Well, we have another story for you guys. This next one is very interesting because Renee also sent in an article to this story that she's actually referencing. And it's a little different from the other stories that we have today. But it did catch our eye. So.
Yeah, it's almost like there's like a real true crime story embedded in this one that actually was on the news.
Yes.
Not that the other ones aren't real, because they are, but just that, this one's got an article.
So we're calling this one The Story That Changed How I Camp. Now, Renee says, I've lived in Salem, Oregon for half of my life. I'm an elementary school teacher, a mom, and probably the least adventurous person anyone would describe as an avid camper. Not very much of a camper. I don't backpack into the wilderness or climb mountains. I like campgrounds with bathrooms. And,
Me too, girl.
Yeah. And I can bring way too much food. Actually, the food is part of the reason I camp.
Same.
Can't blame you because I'm literally... I'll eat like 8 hot dogs in a day.
That's the point, is like sitting and eating with your family.
Yes.
Outside.
Yes.
That's the point.
Around a campfire, yes. That's basically all you do. Some of my earliest memories are of my parents loading up our old station wagon and taking my sister and me to Silver Falls, Detroit Lake, and the coast. If you're from Oregon, you probably know all of these places.
The Oregon coast is also so beautiful. That's where Heath and I like to camp.
Yeah, that's where we go camping.
It is so friggin' beautiful.
So camping always felt safe to me. It was always a comfort activity. But a few years ago, I came across a local news story that completely changed the way I think about all of it. I remember sitting at my kitchen table scrolling through my phone before work when I saw a headline about 2 women who had been camping near Tillamook, Oregon. Shout out Tillamook cheese.
Oh, yeah.
These 2 women were camping in Tillamook, Oregon on the 4th of July in 2024. Now, at first, I assumed that it would turn out to be one of those stories where people got lost or possibly encountered a bear. You see stories like that all the time. But then I kept reading, and my true crime brain finally turned on. According to investigators, these women, who remain unnamed, had been asleep inside their tent along a public trail when around midnight, a man cut his way inside their tent during the night.
Ugh.
Now, this guy bound them, he blindfolded them, told them his plans to sexually assault them, and even abducted them from their tent. And he also, by the way, brought a bag of razor blades. This is a true story, you can look this up. He brought a bag of razor blades with him. But somehow, these women did get away. It felt like a story that might have happened in the 1970s, somewhere far away, but this was in 2024. But these were women who lived in my city, who were trying to enjoy a nice holiday camping trip together, and it almost cost them their lives. Surely, it cost them some part of their sanity. And after reading about those women, I realized I had spent my entire life assuming that the thin layer of nylon around me meant more than it actually did. Now, my husband thought that I was overreacting at first, and he said things like, "That's incredibly rare." And he's right, it is incredibly rare. But I remember sitting there naming campground after campground where we had stayed over the years and saying, "No, you don't understand. These women camp exactly like we camp." I was reminded of this case a couple weeks ago when he was arrested, this guy, this perpetrator, on May 28th of 2026 for this crime.
Whoa.
Yeah, finally this guy was arrested. He's a 58-year-old man named Gene Arnold McLenathan in connection with this crime. And honestly, that almost made it stranger for me just because of how normal this guy looked. And the fact that he, too, is from Salem, Oregon.
What
this is
the
where,
hell?
she says, this is where I live.
Oh my God.
He also had a prior criminal record, too. A burglary and sexual assault in Otis, Oregon, which is out by the northern coast.
Have you been?
I
haven't heard of Otis.
I'm trying to think if I know. I don't know if I know Otis, Oregon, but somewhere.
It doesn't sound like you do.
Yeah, no, I don't. Northern coast area. But this guy actually forced his way into a residence and sexually assaulted a woman.
Oh my God.
So at this point, the FBI thinks that he may actually have more victims.
Wow.
Renee says, with all of that said, I still camp. In fact, my family just went camping a few weeks ago. But I do things a little bit differently now. I don't camp in isolated, dispersed sites anymore. I keep my keys and flashlight beside me, and I pay attention to who is around us. And if somebody gives me a bad feeling, I don't worry about seeming rude. Good. Because I think women spend way too much of their lives worrying about being polite. But for the first time in my life, I realized that the zipper on the tent isn't really protection. It's just a tiny bit of privacy.
Wow. So
Yeah.
true. It is a very vulnerable feeling to sleep
is.
in a tent.
Yeah, it is. Because you think about it, you're like, you're in your tent, you're in your sleeping bag, you're like, I feel safe, but it's like, it is just nylon.
Yeah.
Somebody could easily, and there's just a zipper, somebody could easily unzip it, they could cut through it.
Which usually, I mean, the fact that story, that he cut through their tent and tied them up and assaulted them and kidnapped them, or threatened to assault them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what a wild, horrific story.
Yeah, the other part of that is that he had a bag of razor blades, and I wonder if that was specifically to cut people's tents open.
Oh, yeah, good
like,
point.
why would you be carrying a bag? Like, I can understand if you had a knife with you.
See,
Everybody in Oregon's got a fucking knife.
Well, that's what's scary too. Is even if we talked about this in the past when we were camping of like getting a little lock for your zipper.
Yeah.
But even if you do that, it is just nylon.
Somebody can cut it open.
Yeah. Which is horrible to even
and,
think about that. But
that's the beauty of camping. Is the fact that there is just this nylon wall between you and nature.
Outdoors, yeah.
And that feels really nice. But it's also a kind of a vulnerable position to be in as well.
Absolutely. So true. It's like you want that. But
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Renee, for sharing that one. And now I have one from listener Samantha, who noted in her email how she thinks about this occurrence every time that we cover a child abduction story over on Going West, of course, because of the time that her daughter almost became like a milk carton kid. I'm calling this one The Man at the Rest Stop. Samantha says, this happened nearly 20 years ago now, and even though my daughter barely remembers any of it, I still think about it more than I'd like to admit. I don't tell the story very often because for a long time I felt guilty about how I handled things afterward. And I think part of me always wondered if I should have done more. But here it is. Back then, I was about 34 years old and my daughter Emma was 6. We lived in Southern California and we were driving to Arizona to see my parents because my father had terminal cancer. We all knew he didn't have much time left, and I wanted Emma to spend one more visit with him while he was still well enough to sit outside with her and tell her stories, which had always been their thing together. Looking back now, I realized I wasn't really myself during that period. I was exhausted, emotional, and distracted, and had spent the previous week helping my mom over the phone with doctor's appointments and hospice decisions. And I remember crying after Emma went to bed almost every night because I knew what was coming. I was trying very hard to hold it together for everybody else, but mentally I was all over the place. It was June, but I remember everything was gray and gloomy because the day we started the drive, it was even raining. I have hated driving in the rain since an accident I experienced as a child, so I wasn't thrilled about having a road trip in it.
Yeah, got a little bit of that June gloom going on.
Oh, yeah. Well, Emma had fallen asleep in the back seat not long after we left, and by the time she woke up, we were already several hours into the drive. The first thing she said when she opened her eyes was that she needed to go to the bathroom immediately. This was around 2005, so luckily it wasn't long until we came across a rest stop, so I didn't have to look at my map. I remember noticing how empty it looked. There were probably only a couple cars there, if that, so nothing about it seemed threatening, but as a single mom, it set me on edge a little. Emma and I went inside together, and I didn't see anyone else. I told her to go as quickly as possible, and I took the stall next to her.
Yeah, let's get in and out. Let's get the fuck out of here.
Back on the road,
Everybody
girl.
Everybody knows that feeling of being at a creepy rest stop.
I'm trying to think if I've ever been to a rest stop.
Have you not? You've never been to a rest stop?
No,
Have you not?
Have you not? I feel like every time we've stopped on a road trip, it's like at In-N-Out or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
At like a
you stop
food
at like
place
a
or like a
restaurant.
gas station. Like
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. I really don't know if I've stopped at a rest stop before, but I don't want to.
I've stopped at many, like in the middle of the night, and it is very creepy. Like it's also in the bathrooms. It's so like fluorescent. It's so weirdly bright.
Right.
And that almost makes it like it feels like the beginning of a horror movie.
No, it's very rest stops are very horror movie-esque.
They
I don't know
are,
why.
yeah. It's just what they are.
So understandably so, she is like, let's wrap this up, Emma. After I sat on the toilet, the main door opened, and I had a wash of relief that there was someone else around. So it's kind of funny because you're like, oh, good, there's other people, but also the other people are like what you're can be afraid of.
Yeah, your brain could go either way. It's like, oh, maybe this is a nice person, or is this a bad guy?
Exactly. She says, until I heard heavy footsteps that sounded like work boots stop outside my stall.
No.
Yeah.
No.
I could see a body through the cracks along the stall door. I wanted to say something, but nothing came out of my mouth. I couldn't even relieve myself because I was completely frozen. But then the boots moved over to Emma's stall, and I heard the handle move, as though the person was trying it from the outside. That's when I spoke. I immediately called out, "Occupied," only to be met with silence. The footsteps moved again, and for a second I thought whoever it was had finally realized their mistake. But instead, I heard another stall being tested, until it seems the whole line was tested, which in my mind was to confirm that my daughter and I were the only ones inside. By then, I had this horrible feeling in my stomach that I can't really describe. Mothers will understand what I mean. My daughter Emma called out to me, "Mommy," I think is what she said, and my heart dropped. I remember trying to sound calm when I answered her, as I told her to stay where she was. I stood, fastened my pants like, girl, just trying to pee.
Yeah.
And came out of my stall just in time to see a man standing outside of Emma's. He was probably in his late 40s or early 50s, casual attire, nothing very memorable about him. I said, "Sir, you're in the wrong bathroom." And he looked at me before shoving me to the ground and pulling at Emma's stall door handle again. Emma was screaming for me by then, knowing something was happening, but I got myself up and threw myself against the door while trying to push him back and yelling for help while he remained completely still and determined to get me out of the way.
Right,
even
so now...
pulling my hair.
Oh my God. So now at this point, she knows for a fact that it's nefarious. Because it could have been as simple as, hey, the men's restroom was closed tonight.
Whoops.
Or whoops, sorry, I really had to go to the bathroom, so I went into the women's. This is now a nefarious situation where he has clear intentions.
Absolutely. And she knows it. I mean, he pushed her to the ground.
Yeah, this mommy is fighting for her life for her daughter.
Yes. So at some point, he suddenly grabbed my arm and pulled me away from the door hard enough that I hit the divider between the stalls with my shoulder. I remember the pain immediately, but I barely noticed it at the time because all I could think about was getting back between him and my daughter. Emma was crying hysterically inside the stall, and I remember telling her over and over not to unlock the door. Then, I saw his hand reach over the top of the stall.
Oh no.
So I grabbed one of those little metal trash cans and swung it at him. I don't know if I hit his shoulder or his head because everything after that becomes blurry in my memory, but I know I made contact with something because he stumbled backward and ran out of the bathroom.
Beat that man's ass, Samantha. Beat his ass.
Swinging a trash can, you go, girl.
Yeah, and she's in desperation mode too. She's probably just fucking swinging.
Doing whatever she can.
Yeah.
I was terrified to leave that bathroom, worried that he was waiting for us outside. But I figured that was the best time to leave before he could think about coming back. Like, can you imagine? And you're just like, you don't know where he is outside. You can't see the outdoors.
Yeah.
It's not like there's windows in there.
It's like you want to leave the bathroom, but you kind of don't want to leave the bathroom too.
Yeah, because in a way you're like, well, if he wanted us, he would just come back in because there's nobody else around.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe he's got his car outside, and when we come out, he's gonna snatch us or try to snatch my daughter and put her in the car. She has no idea.
You're stuck. You're stuck in a very bad scenario.
Yeah, but she knows that she needs to act fast and that she wants to get the hell out of there. So she got Emma out of the stall, she says, and ran towards the car with Emma on her hip. But I didn't see him outside. I threw Emma into the car as fast as I could and sped away. I remember thinking the rest of the ride that we were being followed, and I checked my rearview mirror constantly to ensure I wasn't. By the time we reached my parents' house in Arizona, my mother was crying because my dad had taken a turn for the worse. Relatives were everywhere. Hospice nurses were coming and going. I kept thinking I'd call the police the next day. Then my father died 6 days later, and life became consumed by funerals and paperwork and the grief. I never made that call. And after all these years, I am still kicking myself for it, wondering if he ever did that to anybody else.
Chances are he probably fucking did.
Okay, damn, don't make me feel
Well, no,
worse.
It's like if you're that bold to try something like that, you would probably do that again.
Yeah,
because
this is a horrible person.
Because you're an evil piece of shit. You know?
Exactly.
But like this, I don't know why this reminds me of the movie Urban Legend. When she said she came out of the bath, I think everything reminds me of the fucking movie Urban Legend.
Because there's so many different stories in that
No,
one
but
movie.
when she said that she came out of the bathroom and hopped in the car, my mind immediately went to, is there somebody in the back of that car?
Oh, wow, I didn't even go there.
You
'cause
know?
she didn't see him, so maybe. And there wasn't really any other cars.
Well, she did make it to Arizona, so
She did make it.
So it's probably
What a
fine,
devastating story. I mean, just everything that she was going through around that time, like that is the last thing that she needed, and that is what she was handed. So absolutely horrible. Thank you so much, Samantha, for sharing that story with us.
Yeah. This next story was submitted by a longtime listener. His name is Jason, and I'm going to call this one The Night Shift. I'm a lifelong Idaho guy, 46 years old now, and I've been a park ranger for a little over 17 years. I grew up fishing with my dad and grandpa, spent most of my childhood in the woods, and honestly, there was never any other career I seriously considered. So this guy was just a park ranger through and through.
Just like you almost became.
That's what I wanted to become, yes. I knew what I wanted when I was a kid, and somehow I actually got to do it. I still love the work, even though days aren't exciting. You're typically checking trailheads, talking to visitors, helping somebody jump a dead battery, dealing with illegal campfires, cleaning up after people who somehow managed to bring half their house into the forest and then leave it behind. Every once in a while, you assist with search and rescue, and every ranger has stories about bears or mountain lions. But the truth is, wildlife almost never worries me. It's the people that do. It's been almost 6 years since the incident. He calls it the incident. And out of everything I've dealt with over the years, it's the one thing that still pops into my head when I lock up the station at night. I won't name the exact forest because I still work in the area, but it was September, right after Labor Day. And tourist season was mostly wound down and things were finally kind of coming to a close. Now, I can't remember why, because I didn't do this very often, but I stayed late to finish paperwork. Probably because it had been piling up. Our station officially closed at 5, but it wasn't completely unusual for me to stay until, 7 or 8, catching up on reports. The building itself was small. There was a front desk, public restrooms, a couple offices in the back, nothing too fancy. By the time this happened, it was almost dark outside. I was working on something or other when I heard somebody pull into the parking lot. Like I said, I dealt with a lot of people and a lot of lost people. So I thought that it was somebody that was just in need of general help. I looked outside and saw an older pickup truck. Damn, it's always the fucking older pickup truck.
Hell?
Parked near the entrance. It's always the old pickup truck.
If you own an old pickup truck, what are you doing?
You'd be out there creeping campsites. I don't know. So the driver got out, and right away I could tell that something just was not right by the way he shuffled to the locked door. But when I went to the door to open it, though if I'm being honest, I was pretty hesitant, he rushed his way inside. His clothes were dirty, and I could tell straight away that the red on his shirt and jeans was blood.
Oh, God.
The man looked to be in his early 60s, and he looked absolutely exhausted. Now, before I could say anything, the first thing that he said to me was, "I need help. My wife fell." I asked him if she was okay, and if she was conscious, and he just looked at me and said no. Then he said, "I think she's dead." Now, by that point, I had dealt with a gaggle of emergencies before, but hearing somebody say that out loud still stopped me in my tracks. I called dispatch then, and while we waited for deputies and EMS, I sat him down. And while dispatch was on the line, I spread out a map and had him point to where he had parked his truck, where they had been on that trailhead. I marked everything down because I knew that deputies and search and rescue teams would need it as soon as they arrived. I remember him apologizing for everything, for getting blood on the chair, for coming in after hours, for making me deal with him. I thought that was so unordinary because of the nature of his visit. I couldn't tell if he was trying to distract himself, but I wondered why he wasn't focused more on his wife. I had been instructed by deputies not to search for his wife and stay with the man before they knew what actually had happened. And they were close as it was, so the deputies are saying, hey, just stay there with the guy. Don't go out looking for the wife.
Even though he's been on search and rescues before, they're like, let's stick with this guy so he doesn't go somewhere probably.
Yeah, they're like, it's probably not a good idea to leave.
And it's getting dark, right?
Yes, it's getting dark. It's almost dark. The gentleman explained that he and his wife had been hiking one of the trails in the area and that they had done it before several times. They went at sunset, knowing that they'd be back before dark since they'd done it only a few days earlier, but that she had slipped while trying to take a picture near some rocks and had fallen down a steep embankment.
Sounds familiar. We've seen that before.
Are you talking about Harold Henthorne?
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's actually exactly what I'm thinking of.
Yep. So he said he climbed down to her, but that she wasn't breathing. Wanting help as fast as he could get it, he hiked back the short way to his truck and drove to the station. Maybe it was the fact that I listened to too much true crime. I've been listening to Going West and some other pods for years now. Thank you, Jason, by the way. But I remember sitting there thinking, this guy killed his wife.
Right. I mean, that's what comes to your head.
Yeah.
Well, I guess especially because he's got the true crime brain like we do, but...
I had no real reason to think it, but I just couldn't help it.
Fair.
Deputies arrived a minute or so later, followed by search and rescue personnel, and the man rushed out to show them to his wife. He was trying to show them to the area that she was. One of the deputies asked if I'd ride along because I knew the trail better than anybody else out there. By then, it was almost fully dark, and search and rescue had lights everywhere. I never got particularly close, but I remember seeing her hiking poles leaning against a rock, and realizing that she had probably set them down to take that picture. All I found out that night is that she was deceased. But the next day, I asked my supervisor if he had heard anything. His brother worked for the sheriff's office, and a couple days later, he came by the station and filled me in. Now, according to investigators, it was simply a terrible accident. Because there was no crime and no ongoing investigation, it actually never made the news. And honestly, I hope the deputies were right. But every now and then, usually when I'm sitting alone in the station finishing paperwork, I think about that man sitting under those fluorescent lights and dried blood on his hands. I think about how absolutely convinced I was that he had killed her. Like I said, maybe I watched too much true crime and I've heard too many stories over the years, but I just have this feeling.
Understandably so, Jason.
Yeah.
That is weird. You know, I think about this sometimes, like how many true crime stories exist out there that, I mean, I'm not saying that this was, but if it was and nobody is fighting against it, like the woman's children or the woman's sister or something, like nobody's fighting against the situation.
Yeah, they just chalk it up to being an accident.
Exactly. Like I wonder how many times that has happened.
Yeah, well, I know when we talked about the Harold Henthorne case, we talked about the fact that he didn't just kill one wife. He actually, wasn't there like a car that had dropped on...
That sounds so familiar. Yeah. The
dropped
car.
on
Was that
his...
Harold Henthorne or was that somebody else?
I can't remember.
We've covered a couple cases very similar to this.
Yeah, but it's like...
But yeah, there was one where like a car, she was under the car supposedly looking under it and it like fell on her.
Yeah, you wonder how many stories like this are actually legit, like if they were actually accidents.
Yeah.
Or how many people just simply got away with it.
And got lucky.
You remember we talked about that girl in, was it Montana? They were like newlyweds, and
yes,
Cody. She killed her husband though. She like pushed him off a cliff.
Yes.
And then tried to make it seem like it was just a tragic accident.
Is Cody Johnson wrong?
You know?
Oh no.
I think it was Cody Johnson.
Was it?
Yeah, I think you're right.
But yeah, I just wonder how many times that has happened. If this was a tragic accident or if somebody got away with murder. And good on you, Jason, for wondering, because somebody's gotta.
Yeah, somebody's gotta be a skeptic out there. You know what I mean?
Thank you so much, everybody, for listening to this episode of Going West.
Yes, thank you guys so much for listening to this episode. Hope you guys had fun. Again, we're hanging out in the Unwell campground today.
If you can't see us, come see us on YouTube.
Yes.
He's put up this Coleman grill. We have some Uncrustables. We have lanterns, blankets.
I forgot.
I know. Should we? Should we break
You
in
know
as
what?
you tell
I
us
think-
about your birthday?
I think we should cheers our Uncrusties.
Tell us what you're doing for your birthday, Heath. Or tell us what we're doing for your birthday.
We are going to be camping in Oregon. It's going to be lovely. We got a little cabin on a lake somewhere. Not gonna tell anyone.
And then we're going camping. We're doing like all the Oregon things for your birthday.
Yeah, I think, we're doing like 4 days of camping, right? And then we haven't quite decided on the last few days, but it's going to be a blast. All of you guys get some time in and are able to camp this summer and have a good time with your families.
At least in honor of Heath, because we
In honor
did
of
this
me, but
whole
also-
episode for the camping summer.
But also stay safe, bring some mace, keep an eye out for the camp creepers because, they're out there with bags full of fucking razor blades ready to
Yeah.
cut your tent open. So just keep an eye out for those dudes. We love you guys.
Yeah, check out clips for this if you happen to listen and not watch us on YouTube. Check out clips on our socials. We're on Instagram at Going West Podcast. We're also on TikTok. We're on Facebook. And yeah, we will see you guys on Tuesday with a crazy story. You guys don't want to miss this one.
Yes, don't miss it. All right, guys. So for everybody out there in the world,
Don't be a stranger.